Trump putting Putin on notice ahead of tomorrow's high-stakes summit if he does not agree to end the war in Ukraine once and for all.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
The president agreeing to red lines in tomorrow's talks and is already eyeing a second meeting with Zelensky in attendance.
So White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who's making the trip up to Alaska, joins us now. Caroline, when the president, great to see you. When the president says there'll be consequences if there isn't enough progress, roughly, how would you characterize progress to avoid consequences?
Well, first of all, Brian, and great to be with you, too, let's take a step back and look at the progress that has been made over the course of the last 7 months, thanks to President Trump's leadership. He inherited this brutal war that has killed millions of people in both Russia and Ukraine from his predecessor, Joe Biden. And thanks to President Trump's determination to bring this war to an end, both Russia and Ukraine have engaged in direct diplomatic discussions. They have exchanged prisoners of war and discussed other humanitarian issues. And you've seen the president engage directly with both leaders as well, over the phone numerous times with President Putin and in person several times with President Zelensky. The Russian president requested this meeting with the president tomorrow, and the president wants to exhaust all options to try to bring this war to a peaceful resolution. So tomorrow, bright and early, he will be departing the White House for our joint military base in Anchorage, Alaska, where he will engage in a one-on-one meeting with President Putin, which will be followed by a bilateral lunch with the respective delegations from both countries, and then a press conference. And so what comes after that meeting is up to President Trump, and that's part of the reason he is going. He has incredible instincts, and he wants to sit down and look the Russian president in the eye and see what progress can be made to move the ball forward to end this brutal war and to restore peace.
You know, Caroline, he secured that trade deal with Europe to buy energy from America and not from Russia. He slapped a 50% tariff on India because they were buying oil from Russia. He sent weapons to Ukraine. He's doing all this to try to get Putin to end this war. What could be the next step? I know that the president didn't give us examples, but what could be the next step to make them, to really squeeze them so that they lose even more money and they have no choice?
Well, Ainsley, I think one of the best things about President Trump's negotiating style is that he's very wise about not broadcasting moves he may or may not make in the future. And certainly the president has plenty of tools at his disposal that he could use if necessary. But he has always said that diplomacy and negotiation is his primary way of hoping to end this war. And so that's what he'll be looking to do tomorrow. But certainly there are sanctions and many other measures that the president could utilize if he has to. Not that he wants to, he's willing to. But again, diplomacy and negotiation has always been the way for this president. And that's part of his acceptance of the Russian president's request to have this meeting in person tomorrow.
So, Caroline, let's talk about some of the chatter. And that is some of the people in liberal media and liberal circles, people that the president fired, said that the president is going to be embarrassed by Putin. Speak to that. What does the president walk out of a meeting? We know who he is. I'm sure he's not going to tolerate disrespect from Putin, even though he wants peace, right?
Well, Lawrence, you're being very kind, and I won't be so kind, and I'll just name some of those people, such as John Bolton, who I think has made a disgrace of himself on television and in the newspapers, claiming that he knows better than President Trump. No, he doesn't, and neither do any of these so-called foreign policy experts who have never solved a foreign policy conflict in their lives. Look at what this president has done in 6 months. He has stopped 7 global conflicts all around the world, using the leverage of the United States of America to negotiate these conflicts to an end. You had the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia at the White House last week, both of whom said this would not have been possible without the leadership of President Trump and his administration. So the American people trust this president. That's why they overwhelmingly reelected him. And I think it's pathetic, some of the chatter that we see from these so-called experts who have zero accomplishments on their own resumes to point to. President Trump knows what he's doing. He has great instincts. This is a highly complex and brutal war that, again, inherited by Joe Biden. Russia did not invade Ukraine under President Trump. They invaded under Joe Biden because of his incompetence and his weakness. And this president is trying to solve it and bring it to an end. And he deserves great credit for that.
I want to talk about the surge in National Guard and federal officers into D.C. But before we go, just a housekeeping thing. Did you say they're going to meet and then afterwards there'll be a press conference? And if so, will this be a joint press conference where both sides get to ask Vladimir Putin and President Trump a question?
Yes, that is the plan.
Wow. OK, just moving on to the national, which you guys have done in Washington, D.C. Would these 100 arrests have happened with just the D.C. police and Park police? Was there something about the president's surge that brought those arrests?
Absolutely. This is a multi-agency task force that is put forward by the president, the attorney general, our secretary of defense. There are 19 agencies that were working together across 7 districts last night. And I have some updated statistics for you. Overnight, there were 45 criminal arrests made for assault, second and first degree. There were arrests made for the distribution of illegal drugs and narcotics that have now been removed off of the streets. There were 3 illegal firearms that were seized. And in addition to that, there were 29 illegal aliens who were removed off of Washington, D.C. streets last night, many of whom had final orders of removal. So these results are happening night after night because of the efforts of this federal task force that are working alongside the Metropolitan Police Department, who agree with this effort. In fact, the Metropolitan Police Department union stated that President Trump is right to do this, that crime has been totally out of control in the city. And the residents of Washington, maybe not the journalists because they don't want to admit President Trump is right, who live here, but the residents agree. According to a Washington Post poll, 65% of D.C. residents say that crime is a very serious problem in the District of Columbia. And while Democrats want to rant and rave and coddle criminals, President Trump wants to put them behind bars. And that's what this task force is focused on doing for the next 28 days.
Caroline, I know that the